The equipment hall buzzed with nervous energy as hundreds of cadets prepared for their final survival test. Lee Hyun stood quietly in corner section B7, carefully checking each item in his old canvas backpack. The fabric was worn soft from years of use, with small patches sewn over tears and scuff marks that told stories of countless adventures. Around him, other students showed off their gleaming survival kits. Holographic displays floated above expensive cases, showing real-time atmospheric readings and terrain maps. Nanofabricators hummed softly as they created custom tools on demand. Energy cells glowed blue and white, powering devices that could purify water with light beams and create shelter from thin air. Hyun pulled out a coil of thick rope and tested its strength between his hands. The rope was simple hemp fiber, twisted, and treated the old way. He had made it himself during survival training on Earth. Next came a metal knife with a wooden handle, worn smooth by his father's grip and then his own. The blade held a perfect edge despite its age. "Hey, everyone! Come look at this!" Park Jun called out from across the hall. His voice carried that sharp tone he used when he wanted to embarrass someone. Lee Hyun brought his grandfather's camping gear to Galactic Academy. Other cadets turned to look. Jun held up his own survival case, a sleek black rectangle that projected a list of contents in glowing text. "I have a molecular food printer, atmospheric processor, and emergency habitat generator. What do you have, Hyun? A stick and some string?" Several students laughed. Hyun continued packing without looking up. He folded a small metal pot and placed it carefully in the bag. The pot was dented and blackened from many fires, but it heated evenly and never failed. "Look at that thing," said another cadet, pointing at Hyun's backpack. "It looks like it came from a museum. Does it even have power cells?" "Maybe he thinks we're going camping in the Stone Age," Jun said, getting more laughs. Kim Nara walked over to Hyun's station. She was one of the few students who had never joined in when others mocked him. Her own gear was modern but practical, middle-range equipment that worked well without showing off. "Ignore them," she said quietly. "Your gear got you through basic. Training just fine." Hyun looked up and gave her a small smile. "It got my father through 20 years in the Earth Rangers. Got my grandfather through the colony wars. I trust it." He pulled out a small leather pouch filled with fish hooks, needle and thread, and water purification tablets. Each item had been tested by time and necessity. Nothing fancy, nothing that needed power or software updates, just tools that worked. More students gathered around to watch the show. Among them were alien cadets from across the galaxy. A tall, thin Altarian with blue-gray skin shook his head as he looked at Hyun's simple gear. How did humans even reach space with such primitive tools? The alien asked. His own survival kit looked more like a small laboratory, filled with devices that could analyze any substance and adapt to any environment. "Maybe that's why they're always having problems," suggested a Kepler cadet, her insect-like features showing amusement. "Still thinking like cave dwellers." The laughter grew louder. Even some human cadets joined in, embarrassed to be associated with such old-fashioned methods. In a galaxy full of advanced civilizations, nobody wanted to look backward or simple. Hyun packed a small axe with a wooden handle. The steel head was bright from careful sharpening, and the handle fit his grip perfectly. His father had shaped it for him when he turned 16. "An axe?" Jun laughed. "What are you going to do? Chop down a tree? I have a molecular disruptor that can cut through anything." "What happens when your disruptor runs out of power?" Nara asked. "It won't," Jun said confidently. "These energy cells last for months. Besides, we'll only be out there for 3 days." Instructor Vextal entered the hall, and the room quickly went silent. The reptilian alien stood nearly 7 feet tall, with scales that shifted from green to brown depending on his mood. His large eyes swept across the room, taking in every detail. "Cadets, he said in his deep, hissing voice. "You have 30 minutes to complete your equipment checks. This will be your last chance to add or remove items before the challenge begins." Students rushed back to their stations, making final adjustments to their gear. Hyun continued his methodical checking. He tested the blade on his knife against a piece of leather. He counted matches and made sure they stayed dry in their waterproof container. He checked that his compass needle moved freely and that his water bottle had no cracks. "The survival challenge will test everything you have learned," Vextal announced. "You will be dropped in teams of 6 on Kepler 442c. The planet has unpredictable weather, dangerous wildlife, and terrain that changes quickly. You must survive for 72 hours with only the equipment you carry." He paused, letting his words sink in. "Some of you will find this easy. Others will discover that expensive equipment means nothing without the knowledge to use it properly." His large eyes seemed to focus on Hyun for a moment before moving on. "Teams have been assigned randomly," Vextal continued. "Team 7 consists of cadets Lee Hyun, Kim Nara, Park Jun, Ziktar, Mordun, and Velnara. Report to Transport Bay 4 in 1 hour." Hyun closed his backpack and lifted it onto his shoulders. The weight felt familiar and comfortable, like putting on an old jacket. He had carried this pack through mountains and deserts, forests, and frozen wastelands. It had never let him down. June walked by with his sleek case floating beside him on anti-gravity projectors. "Try not to slow us down with your antique gear, Hyun. Some of us actually want to pass this test." Other team members gathered near the exit. Ziktar was a crystalline being whose body caught and reflected light in beautiful patterns. Technology seemed to grow from his skin like living jewelry. Morden looked like a cloud of gas held together by will and advanced science. Velnara's insect features were enhanced with biomechanical improvements that made her stronger and faster than nature intended. They all looked at Hyun's simple backpack with something between pity and embarrassment. "Don't worry," Nara whispered as they walked toward the transport bay. "You know more about real survival than any of them." Hyun nodded but said nothing. In a few hours, they would all learn what survival really meant. He had a feeling his old-fashioned gear was about to surprise everyone. The transport ship shook as it entered Kepler 442c's atmosphere. Through the small windows, Hyun could see a world of red rock and purple vegetation. Strange clouds moved in patterns that seemed almost alive, casting shadows that danced across the alien landscape below. "Drop zone in 5 minutes," the pilot announced over the intercom. Team 7 sat in a circle on the metal floor of the transport bay. Each cadet checked their gear one final time before the drop. The ship would leave them with emergency beacons, but no other contact with the outside world for 3 full days. Zikatar's crystalline body hummed softly as he activated various biotech systems. Lights pulsed under his translucent skin as his internal computers came online. "I am receiving orbital data streams," he said in a voice like wind chimes. "Weather patterns indicate stable conditions for the next 18 hours. Mordun's gaseous form shifted and swirled as he tested his atmospheric processors. Air quality is acceptable for most species. Temperature ranges from 10 to 30 degrees. Humidity levels normal." Velnara clicked her mandibles together, testing the biomechanical enhancements in her arms and legs. Her insect features had been improved with tiny machines that made her 3 times stronger than baseline humans. "Threat assessment shows large predator activity in Sector 7. We should avoid that area." Park Jun floated his equipment case in front of him, watching data scroll across its holographic display. "My habitat generator can create a shelter big enough for all 6 of us. The molecular food printer will handle our nutritional needs. This is going to be easier than basic training." Nara looked less confident as she checked her standard-issue survival kit. Her gear was reliable, but basic compared to what the others carried. "What if something goes wrong with the technology?" "Nothing will go wrong," June said. This equipment is military grade. It's been tested in dozens of environments worse than this one. Hyun sat quietly, testing the straps on his backpack and making sure everything was secure. He had studied the planet's basic information during the briefing. Rocky terrain, seasonal storms, day and night cycles of 26 hours each. Wildlife included both small scavengers and larger predators. Plant life was mostly edible but required proper preparation. 2 minutes to drop, the pilot called out. The bay doors opened with a loud clang, revealing the alien world below. Wind rushed in, carrying the scent of strange flowers and distant rain. A platform lowered from the ship's belly, large enough to hold all 6 cadets and their equipment. "Remember," Instructor Vextal's voice came through their comm units. "You have 72 hours to demonstrate survival skills. Use whatever methods work best for your team. Good luck." The platform dropped away from the ship with a sudden lurch. Hyun felt his stomach rise as they fell toward the red and purple landscape below. Anti-gravity fields slowed their descent, but the ride was still rough enough to rattle his teeth. They landed in a wide valley between 2 rocky hills. The ground was covered with short, thick grass that felt spongy underfoot. Strange trees grew in clusters, their purple leaves rustling in the warm breeze. A small stream ran along the eastern edge of the valley, its water clear and fast-moving. "Perfect. Landing zone," June announced as he activated his habitat generator. The device rose from his equipment case and began projecting energy fields. Within minutes, a dome-shaped shelter took form, its walls glowing with soft blue light. Climate, control, security barriers, and communication array all online. Ziktar walked to the center of the valley, his body still humming with electronic activity. Satellite link established. I am downloading detailed topographic data and extended weather forecasts. Information flowed across his crystalline surface. Like living tattoos, Mordun expanded his gaseous form to sample the air around them. His atmospheric processors worked constantly, analyzing everything from oxygen levels to trace chemicals. Air quality excellent, no toxic compounds detected. Local flora appears safe for most carbon-based life forms. Velnara tested her enhanced strength by lifting large rocks and moving them aside. Her biomechanical improvements made the heavy stones look like toys. Perimeter secured. I can detect movement patterns of local animals. Nothing dangerous within. 2 kilometers. The other 4 cadets were clearly impressed with their teammates' abilities. Advanced technology made the hostile alien world seem as safe as a training facility back at the academy. Hyun walked slowly around the valley, looking at things the sensors couldn't measure. He knelt beside the stream and cupped water in his hands, tasting it carefully. Sweet and clean, but with a mineral flavor that suggested it came from deep underground springs. Good water, but it would need treatment to be completely safe. He examined the purple-leaved trees more closely. The bark was smooth and gray, with sap that smelled like pine needles. The leaves were thick and waxy, designed to hold moisture during dry periods. Several showed bite marks from local animals, which meant they were probably edible. The grass crunched under his feet with a sound like breaking twigs. When he knelt to examine it, he found it was actually more like thick moss, growing in dense mats over the rocky soil. It would make good insulation but poor kindling for fires. "What are you doing over there, Hyun?" June called out from the shelter. "We have everything under control here." Hyun looked up from where he was examining animal tracks near the stream. "Just getting to know the area." "My sensors already mapped everything," Ziktar said. "There is no need for manual investigation." Hyun found tracks from at least 3 different types of animals. Small ones like rabbits, medium-sized ones that might be deer or antelope, and larger ones with claws that suggested predators. The tracks told stories about daily routines, feeding patterns, and which areas were safe or dangerous. He also noticed things the electronic sensors missed. The way the wind moved through the valley created natural air currents that would affect fire and shelter placement. The angle of the sun would change the temperature in different parts of the valley throughout the day. Small details that didn't show up on digital maps, but mattered for comfortable survival. "Come join us," Nara called. "June is setting up the food printer." Hyun selected a spot near the stream, but protected from the wind by a cluster of rocks. He cleared away loose stones and began setting up his simple camp. No energy fields or projected barriers, just a level spot for his sleeping bag and a ring of stones for a fire. The others watched with amusement as he gathered dry wood and built a small pile of kindling. Their advanced equipment made such primitive activities seem pointless and outdated. The first day passed easily for everyone. June's habitat provided comfortable shelter and perfectly prepared meals. The aliens' technological advantages gave the team detailed information about everything around them. Even the weather cooperated, staying warm and clear just as predicted. As the alien sun set in a spectacular display of orange and purple light, Team 7 felt confident about their survival test. Advanced technology had made the hostile world seem friendly and manageable. Hyun tended his small fire and prepared a simple meal using his basic camping gear. The others saw no point in such primitive methods when better alternatives existed. None of them suspected that their technology was about to fail them completely. Hyun woke before dawn to the sound of wind picking up strength. The small fire he had banked for the night still glowed with hot coals. He added dry wood carefully and watched flames dance back to life. Something felt wrong about the air pressure and the way the clouds were moving. Inside June's energy shelter, the other 5 team members slept comfortably on projected sleeping surfaces. Climate control kept the temperature perfect, while security fields monitored the area around them. Their technology promised a safe and easy night. Hyun stepped outside his simple lean-to shelter and looked at the sky. The stars were disappearing behind thick clouds that moved faster than they should. The wind carried a strange electric smell, like the air before lightning storms back on Earth. His grandfather had taught him to read weather signs, and every instinct told him trouble was coming. He walked over to the energy shelter and tapped on its glowing wall. "Everyone wake up. We need to talk." June opened his eyes and checked the time display floating above his head. "It's 4 in the morning, Hyun. What's wrong?" "Bad weather coming. We should prepare." Ziktar's crystalline body hummed as he connected to orbital satellites. "Weather data shows clear skies for the next 12 hours. Your human senses are unreliable." "My equipment agrees," Mordun said, his gaseous form swirling as atmospheric processors analyzed the air. "No storm systems detected within 50 kilometers. Hyun pointed at the clouds racing overhead. "Look at the sky. Feel the wind. Something big is coming." "Sensors are more accurate than primitive observation," Velnara said. Her biomechanical enhancements showed her detailed atmospheric readings. "All systems indicate stable weather." The others went back to sleep, trusting their technology over Hyun's concerns. He returned to his simple camp and began securing his gear. His backpack went into a waterproof bag. His fire was built up and protected with a windscreen of rocks. 2 hours later, the storm hit. It started with a flash of green light that filled the entire sky. Then came a sound like the universe tearing apart, followed by electromagnetic pulses that made the air itself seem to crackle and burn. The storm was, unlike anything in the databases, a phenomenon that happened only once every few decades on this planet. June's energy shelter flickered and died. The habitat generator sparked and went dark, leaving the 5 cadets exposed to wind and rain that felt like ice water. Security fields vanished, climate control stopped, and the comfortable sleeping surfaces collapsed into nothing. "What happened?" June shouted over the howling wind. Ziktar's body went dark as his internal systems overloaded. Pain shot through his crystalline structure as biotech implants short-circuited. "All connections lost. Satellite link down. Internal processors failing." Morden's atmospheric processors shut down one by one, leaving him unable to analyze or adapt to the changing air. His gaseous form began to lose cohesion as he struggled to maintain structure without technological help. Velnara's biomechanical enhancements sparked and went dead. Her enhanced strength disappeared, leaving her feeling weak and vulnerable. "Systems offline. I can't access any upgrades." The electromagnetic storm raged for hours, sending pulse after pulse through the atmosphere. Every piece of electronic equipment in the valley died. Screens went black, power cells drained, and sophisticated machines became expensive paperweights. Rain fell in sheets, driven by winds that threatened to knock the cadets off their feet. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in minutes. Without climate control, they felt every bit of the cold. "My food printer is dead," June said, panic creeping into his voice. "The molecular disruptor won't start. Nothing works." "Shelter!" Nara shouted over the storm. "We need shelter." The only working shelter in the valley was Hyun's simple lean-to, built from branches and covered with his old canvas tarp. It wasn't big, but it was dry and protected from the worst of the wind. "Over here," Hyun called, waving them toward his camp. The 5 cadets crowded into the small shelter, dripping wet and shivering. Hyun's fire still burned under its rock windscreen, the only source of warmth and light in the storm-torn valley. "How is your fire still burning?" Ziktar asked, his voice weak without electronic enhancement. "Wood doesn't need power," Hyun said. He added more fuel to the flames and began checking his teammates for signs of hypothermia. "Nara, take off those wet clothes and wrap this blanket around you. June, sit closer to the fire." "This is impossible," June said, teeth chattering. "Military equipment doesn't just fail like this." "It does when the power goes out," Hyun said. He pulled his metal pot from his backpack and filled it with rainwater caught in a canvas sheet. "Any technology that needs energy can break. That's why my grandfather always carried backup tools." Morden's gaseous form huddled close to the fire, trying to absorb heat without atmospheric processors to regulate temperature. "How long will this storm last?" "Hard to say without satellites," Hyun said. He hung the pot over the fire using a metal hook and chain from his pack. "But storms like this usually blow through in 6 to 8 hours. Velnara looked around the small shelter in amazement. Everything Hyun had was simple, basic, and working perfectly. His tarp kept them dry. His fire kept them warm, and his metal tools didn't care about electromagnetic pulses. "Your equipment still works," she said. "It has to," Hyun replied. He opened a waterproof pouch and pulled out tea bags. "When you can't fix something in the field, it's useless. Simple tools work when complex ones fail." The storm continued raging. Outside, but inside the lean-to shelter, Team 7 was safe and warm. Hyun shared hot tea and dried food from his supplies. His rope and canvas kept out the wind. His metal knife still cut, his compass still pointed north, and his matches still made fire. "I don't understand," June said as he sipped hot tea. "How did you know this would happen?" "I didn't know about the storm," Hyun said. "But I knew something. Could go wrong. It always does. That's why you plan for the worst and hope for the best." Outside, something howled in the distance, a sound full of hunger and menace, getting closer through the storm. "What was that?" Nara whispered. Hyun reached for his simple spear, made from a straight branch and his knife tied to the end. "Company," he said quietly. "The electromagnetic pulses probably shut down the energy barriers that keep the big predators away." The 5 cadets who had mocked his primitive gear now looked at his weapons with new respect. In a world where technology had failed, simple tools had become the most advanced equipment they had. The storm was far from over, and the real test of survival was just beginning. The howling grew closer as dawn broke gray and cold over the valley. Through the dying storm, Hyun could see shapes moving between the purple-leafed trees, large four-legged creatures with thick fur and curved claws. the electromagnetic pulses, had shut down the energy barriers that normally kept them away from the valley. "How many are there?" Nara whispered, peering out from the lean-to shelter. Hyun counted silently, watching the way the creatures moved through the trees. 6, maybe 7. They hunt in packs like wolves. "My bioscanners are still offline," Velnara said, flexing her arms uselessly. Without her mechanical enhancements, she felt weak and ordinary. "I cannot tell how dangerous they are." "Dangerous enough," Hyun said. He pulled his axe from his backpack and tested the edge with his thumb. The steel was sharp and ready. "But animals are predictable if you understand them." Ziktar's crystalline body remained dim and lifeless. "Without my internal systems, I am nearly helpless. These creatures could tear me apart." "Not if we work together," Hyun said. He began organizing his simple tools. "Fire keeps most predators away. If that doesn't work, we fight as a team." June looked at his dead equipment case with despair. Inside were weapons that could stop any creature on the planet, but without power they were just expensive metal boxes. "I don't know how to fight with primitive weapons." "Then it's time to learn," Hyun said. He showed them how to make spears from straight branches and their knives, how to build a fire barrier that would protect them on 3 sides, how to use rocks and rope to create traps that didn't need power cells or computer guidance. The work was slow and clumsy at first. Hands used to controlling advanced technology struggled with basic tools. But gradually, the team began to understand what Hyun had known all his life. Simple tools worked when you knew how to use them. "Hold the spear like this," Hyun demonstrated to Morden, whose gaseous form had condensed enough to grip objects. "Keep the point steady and let them come to you." Nara proved quickest to learn. Her standard equipment had always been closer to Hyun's level, so the change was less dramatic for her. She helped teach the others while Hyun worked on their defenses. "Why doesn't my culture have tools like these?" Velnara asked as she practiced with a simple sling. "We went straight from primitive hunting to advanced technology." "Maybe that's the problem," Hyun said. He was building a larger fire, adding green wood that would create smoke to confuse the predators. "Humans spent thousands of years getting these tools right. We never forgot how to do things the simple way." The creatures crept closer as the morning wore on. They seemed to understand that their usual barriers were gone, but they remained cautious of the fire and the strange smells of alien beings. Hyun taught his teammates to read animal behavior, how a lowered head meant aggression, how circling showed they were looking for weakness, how pack hunters tested defenses before attacking. "They're getting bolder," Nara observed. One of the creatures had come within 20 meters of their camp. "Good," Hyun said. "That means they're getting careless." He had been setting snares around the camp using his rope and knowledge passed down from his grandfather. Simple loops that would tighten around a leg or neck when stepped on. The creatures were too smart to walk into obvious traps, but hunger might make them reckless. The attack came at midday when the team was eating a meal of dried food and plants Hyun had identified as safe. 3 creatures charged from different directions while the others circled to cut off escape routes. "Firebrands!" Hyun shouted, grabbing a burning stick from the fire. "Wave them at the creatures! Don't let them get close!" The team responded better than expected. June and Nara grabbed burning branches and stood back to back, creating a wall of flame. Velnara used her sling to send rocks flying at the attackers. Even Ziktar and Morden fought with simple weapons, protecting each other despite their weakened states. The creatures had never faced organized resistance from prey animals. Fire confused them, and the coordinated defense broke their attack pattern. 2 of them triggered Hyun's snares and became tangled in rope loops. The others retreated, howling in frustration. "We did it," June said, breathing hard but grinning with excitement. "We actually fought them off." "This time," Hyun said. "They'll be back when they get hungry enough." But something had changed in the team. June no longer looked at Hyun's simple tools with contempt. Instead, he asked questions about how they worked and why they were designed the way they were. "Your knife," June said, examining the wooden handle. "It doesn't look like much, but it's perfectly balanced. My father shaped the handle to fit my grip," Hyun explained. "The blade is carbon steel, heat-treated the old way. It'll hold an edge better than most modern alloys." Velnara discovered that working with her hands instead of relying on mechanical enhancements gave her a different kind of satisfaction. There is something pleasing about making tools work through skill instead of programming. Even Ziktar found value in the simple approach. Without his biotech connections, he had to rely on his natural senses and intelligence. I had forgotten what it felt like to think without computer assistance. There is a clarity to it. The second day passed with the team learning more basic skills: how to purify water using sand and charcoal filters, how to identify edible plants and prepare them safely, how to read weather signs and animal tracks. Mordun proved surprisingly good at fire management, using his gaseous nature to control airflow and temperature. These methods are more flexible than my atmospheric processors. I can adapt them to any situation. As evening approached, the team worked together to strengthen their defenses. They built better barriers, improved their weapons, and organized watch schedules. The work was hard without powered tools, but it brought them together in a way that individual technology never had. "I owe you an apology," June said as they sat around the fire that night. "I thought your gear was primitive because it looked simple. I didn't understand that simple can be better." Hyun poked the fire with a stick, sending sparks into the night sky. "My grandfather always said that the best tools are the ones that work when everything else fails." Around the fire, 5 cadets who had started the survival test relying on advanced technology now understood why humans had reached the stars while keeping their feet on the ground. The third morning brought new disaster. Heavy rains during the night had swollen the small stream into a raging river. Water that had been knee-deep now rushed past at shoulder height, carrying logs and debris from the mountains above. "The whole valley is flooding," Nara said, watching muddy water creep steadily toward their camp. "We need to get to higher ground." Hyun studied the rising water and the steep hills on either side of the valley. The nearest high ground was a rocky ledge about 50 meters up the eastern slope. Under normal circumstances, it would be an easy climb for cadets with anti-gravity assists and powered climbing gear, but their equipment was still dead from the electromagnetic storm. "My habitat generator had emergency lift systems," June said, staring at his useless equipment case. "It could have carried all of us to safety in minutes." "Well, it doesn't work now," Velnara said. Without her biomechanical enhancements, the steep climb looked impossible. Her natural insect strength wasn't enough for that kind of vertical ascent. Ziktar's crystalline body was especially vulnerable to the rising water. "I cannot swim in my current state. The water will short-circuit what remains of my internal systems. Mordun's gaseous form was already being affected by the humidity. I need dry air to maintain cohesion. Too much moisture and I will disperse." The water continued rising. What had seemed like a manageable problem was becoming a life-threatening emergency. In an hour, maybe 2, the entire valley floor would be underwater. Hyun walked along the base of the eastern slope, examining the rock face and testing handholds. The cliff was steep but climbable, with enough cracks and ledges to provide a route to safety. The problem was getting everyone up, especially the alien team members who couldn't make the climb alone. "We need a pulley system," he said finally. "Something to lift the ones who can't climb." "How?" June asked. "We don't have any mechanical assistance." Hyun pulled his rope from his backpack. It was 50 meters of strong hemp fiber, tested and trusted. Sometimes the simplest machines are the most reliable. He began fashioning a climbing harness using rope and canvas strips. The design was ancient, used by mountain climbers for thousands of years before anti-gravity systems were invented. Simple but effective for supporting body weight during a climb. "I still don't understand how this helps," Velnara said. Even with a harness. I cannot climb that high. You don't have to, Hyun said. He was studying the cliff face, looking for something specific. There. See that sturdy tree growing out of the rocks about halfway up? If I can get a rope over that branch, we can build a mechanical advantage system. Nara followed his gaze to the gnarled tree clinging to the cliff face. How do you plan to get the rope up there? It's 25 meters straight up. Hyun smiled and pulled his sling from his belt. The simple weapon had served humans well for millennia, capable of throwing stones with accuracy and power that surprised people used to energy weapons. He tied a thin cord to a smooth rock and loaded it into the sling. Years of practice had made his aim nearly perfect. The rock sailed up and over the tree branch, carrying the cord with it. He tied the main rope to the cord and pulled it up until the rope was properly positioned. Now we have a pulley system, he said. The tree branch acts as a fulcrum. 2 people pulling down on one end can lift 1 person on the other end. It was basic physics, the kind of mechanical advantage that had allowed humans to build pyramids and cathedrals long before powered machinery existed. The math was simple, but the results were impressive. June stared at the setup in amazement. That's actually brilliant. You're using the tree as a natural pulley. First rule of human engineering, Hyun said, use what you have, not what you wish you had. The rescue operation began immediately. Hyun went up first, climbing hand over hand to establish an anchor point at the top. His years of practical experience made the ascent look easy, though his muscles burned with effort by the time he reached the ledge. Nara came next, climbing under her own power with the rope as a safety line. Her standard training had included basic mountaineering, so she managed the ascent without major problems. Then came the difficult part. Ziktar's crystalline body was heavy and fragile, unable to grip the rock face effectively. Hyun and Nara hauled him up using the pulley system, their combined strength multiplied by the mechanical advantage of the rope and tree branch. Velnara followed, her natural fear of heights overcome by the rising water below. The rope system made her feel secure even when her insect legs couldn't find good holds on the rock. Morden was the most challenging. His gaseous form had to be contained in a canvas bag to prevent dispersion during the lift. The process was awkward and dangerous, but the simple rope system worked perfectly. June came last, climbing with the equipment he could salvage. His respect for Hyun's methods had grown enormously over the past 3 days. What he had once seen as primitive now looked like sophisticated engineering using basic principles. From the safety of the rocky ledge, Team 7 watched the valley fill with water. Their former campsite disappeared beneath the muddy flood. Without Hyun's simple tools and ancient knowledge, they would all have drowned. I don't understand, Ziktar said, his voice full of wonder. How did humans develop such effective techniques using only basic materials? Necessity, Hyun replied. When you can't rely on power cells or computer systems, you learn to make simple things work really well. Velnara looked at the rope and pulley system that had saved their lives. This is not primitive at all. It is elegant, sophisticated in its simplicity. Every human child learns these principles, Hyun said. Levers, pulleys, inclined planes, we call them simple machines, but they're the foundation of everything we build. June coiled the rope carefully, treating it with new respect. I always thought complexity meant superiority. More features, more processing power, more capabilities. Sometimes, Hyun said, but the best solutions are usually the simplest ones. They work when everything else breaks down. Morden reconstituted his gaseous form in the dry air of the ledge. Your species has a gift for practical problem-solving. You see solutions where others see only obstacles. From their high vantage point, they could see rescue ships approaching in the distance. The 72-hour survival test was almost over. But the lessons learned on the alien world would last much longer. As they waited for pickup, Hyun shared the last of his dried food and showed his teammates how to build a signal fire using materials found on the ledge. Even at the end of their ordeal, there were still things to learn from human ingenuity and simple tools that worked when everything else failed. The rescue ship descended through clear morning skies, its anti-gravity engines humming softly as it approached the rocky ledge where Team 7 waited. Instructor Vextal stood at the open bay door, his large reptilian eyes taking in the scene. Below, Hyun helped his teammates gather their equipment for pickup. Most of their high-tech gear remained dead and useless, but they packed it anyway. The simple rope that had saved their lives was coiled carefully and secured to Hyun's backpack where it belonged. "I cannot believe we survived," Ziktar said, his crystalline body starting to show faint lights as it slowly recharged from solar energy. "When our technology failed, I thought we were finished." "We would have been," Velnara admitted. "Without Hyun's knowledge and equipment, the storm would have killed us the first night." The rescue ship touched down on the narrow ledge with precise control. Instructor Vextal stepped out, followed by several other Academy officials and medical technicians. They began immediate scans of the cadets to check for injuries or illness. Team 7 reporting successful completion of survival exercise, June said formally, but his voice carried new respect for the experience they had shared. "So," I observed, Vextal said. His scaled features showed what might have been amusement. "Your performance was quite educational, for all of us. Medical scans showed the team was tired and hungry, but in good health. More importantly, they had learned lessons that couldn't be taught in any classroom." As they boarded the rescue ship, each cadet carried new understanding about survival, technology, and the value of simple solutions. The flight back to Galactic Academy Station Epsilon took 6 hours. During the journey, Instructor Vextal interviewed each team member about their experiences. The conversations were recorded for later analysis and training purposes. "What did you learn about survival?" Vextal asked June. "That expensive equipment is useless if you don't understand basic principles," June replied. "Hyun's simple tools worked because they were based on physics and engineering that never changes. No software updates required." Velnara had a different perspective. "I learned that intelligence and strength come in many forms. My biomechanical enhancements made me physically powerful, but they also made me dependent. Real strength comes from knowledge and adaptability." Ziktar's crystalline form hummed thoughtfully. "My species developed technology that integrated with our biology. We thought this made us superior to races that used external tools. But when that integration failed, we became helpless. Humans maintained the ability to function independently of their technology. When Vextal interviewed Hyun, the questions were different. "Why do you think your equipment performed better than your teammates' advanced gear?" "It wasn't better," Hyun said honestly. "It was just more reliable. Every tool in my pack has been tested by generations of humans in real survival situations. We kept what worked and improved what didn't. That takes time, but it creates tools you can trust." "And why do humans maintain such methods when more advanced alternatives exist?" Hyun thought carefully before answering. "Because we learned not to put all our trust in one solution. Technology is wonderful when it works, but it can fail. Simple tools and basic knowledge are backup systems for when the complex stuff breaks down." Back at the academy, the debriefing took place in the main auditorium. All 600 cadets attended, along with instructors from a dozen different species. Vextal stood at the center of the room, with Team 7 seated nearby. "The survival exercise you just completed was designed to test more than your ability to stay alive for 72 hours, Vextal announced. "It was designed to reveal the true nature of different approaches to problem-solving and survival." A holographic display showed footage from the team's 3 days on Kepler 442c. The electromagnetic storm, the predator attack, the flood rescue. Everything had been recorded by hidden cameras for analysis. The storm was not entirely natural, Vextal continued. We enhanced it using orbital generators to create electromagnetic pulses that would disable most electronic equipment. This was intended to test how different species adapt when their technological advantages are removed. Murmurs of surprise rippled through the auditorium. Many cadets had wondered why such a powerful storm had occurred during their exercise. What we discovered was illuminating, the instructor said. Most species in the galactic community have evolved beyond the need for basic survival skills. They rely completely on technological solutions for environmental challenges. The holographic display focused on Hyun's simple backpack and the tools that had kept Team 7 alive. Rope, knife, axe, metal pot, matches, items that looked primitive compared to the gleaming technology around them. Humans are unique, Vextal explained. They achieved spaceflight while maintaining their connection to fundamental problem-solving methods. They advanced technologically without abandoning the basic skills that had ensured their survival for millennia. He gestured toward Hyun. Cadet Lee demonstrated something we rarely see in the galaxy: the ability to solve complex problems using simple, reliable methods. His tools worked because they were designed through thousands of years of trial and error refined by countless generations of users. The audience listened intently as Vextal continued his analysis. This is why humans have become valuable members of galactic society despite being relative newcomers. They provide perspective and solutions that pure technology cannot offer. The display, scenes showed Hyun teaching his teammates to make fire, build shelter, and work with basic tools. The transformation of the team from helpless dependence to competent self-reliance was dramatic and inspiring. Technology should enhance ability, not replace it, Vextal said. When we become completely dependent on complex systems, we become vulnerable to failure. Humans understand this instinctively. After the presentation, cadets crowded around Hyun to examine his equipment more closely. What had been mocked, 3 defense, days earlier was now studied with respectful curiosity. "Where can I get a backpack like this?" asked a Altarian cadet. "Can you teach me to make rope and use it for climbing?" requested another. June approached with a package under his arm. Inside was a canvas backpack, worn but well-maintained, filled with simple tools made by human hands. "I want to learn to use these properly. Will you teach me?" Hyun smiled and nodded. "First lesson is tomorrow. Bring work gloves." Nara was selected along with Hyun for the Academy's Elite Crisis Response Team, a unit that handled emergencies where standard technology might fail. Their combination of modern training and traditional skills made them ideal for unpredictable situations. The survival exercise became a standard part of Academy training, with electromagnetic pulse storms designed to test every cadet's ability to function without technological assistance. Human instructors were brought in to teach basic skills that had been forgotten by more advanced civilizations. Hyun continued his studies at the Academy, but his old canvas backpack remained with him always. It had proven its worth not just as survival equipment, but as a symbol of human ingenuity and the value of simple solutions in a complex universe. Sometimes the oldest tools were indeed the most advanced, refined by generations of use into forms that worked when everything else failed. In a galaxy full of technological marvels, that kind of reliability was more precious than any computer system or energy weapon. The class that had once mocked his old-fashioned backpack now understood that it represented something uniquely human and uniquely valuable: the ability to keep moving forward when the power went out.